Morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Professor. How you doing today?
Good. How are you, Julian?
I'm doing good. It's really windy out.
Is it? I haven't
Yeah.
been outside. Yeah, at least it's not raining, right?
True, or snowing.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Professor, I also have a question. I submitted the research paper last night. It's fine. It said it was late, but it's fine.
It's
So,
fine. Yeah.
thank you.
Definitely. I didn't change it on uh I didn't change it on Canvas, but it's good. It should be good.
Thank you.
No problem. Where did I put my PowerPoint for today? So it looks like I misplaced my PowerPoint for today, but I have notes. It's just not as nice. It's just not going to be as nice. Ooh, I wonder what I did with that. Hmm. Okay. So if you were taking the quiz, you probably got kicked out by now. Okay. So I don't know what happened to my PowerPoint for today, but we still will be able to do our stuff. It's just not going to be as polished. Sorry. Okay. So midterm grades went out yesterday on your paper and your annotated bib, and you put in your research log for yesterday. If you haven't gotten that in, try to get it in soon, as soon as you can. I have some other stuff to grade first. I have a couple midterm papers, and I think that's it. And then I have some presentations, and of course quizzes and daily activities. But if you haven't gotten your research log 4 in, try to get it in soon. Okay. Anything else coming up? Let me look. So for Thursday, we're going to be watching Deadpool. And then a week from today, we'll be reading about Deadpool. And then it'll be research log 5 due. Which will be about the stuff we read for today, as well as the 2 things that we have to read on for a week from today, for next Monday. Any questions for me so far? Okay. So I have a bit here, but very little. Burke, so we read the first half of Burke's argument already. Do you remember some of the things he said in the first half of his chapter about So this is about kind of like why superhero films have really taken off in the in the year 2000, from 2000 to 2010. So he's looking at the first 10 years of superhero films, and he's looking at kind of why they took off, why they were, he calls it the golden age of comic book filmmaking, why it was so good, why it was so ripe. And he looks at and considers, you know what, let me go, sorry, let me just go back to his really quick. He looks at and considers a bunch of different arguments. Do you remember what he says about them? Oh, God. He considers the 9/11 argument. Do you remember what he says?
Wait, this is the reading we have for today, not the first half of his.
Well, look, we're kind of reviewing the first half. Does that make sense? I felt like we should review the first half.
Well, because I know in this one he talks about 9/11 and how people felt everything was more justified with terrorist acts and like America putting a stop to them in superhero movies, especially post 9/11.
Yeah. So this is from the other one. So this is from the beginning of his chapter where he kind of lays things out. He says, like, okay, there might be several different reasons why superhero films are so popular from 2001 to 2010. Some of it may be, you know, the cultural trauma of 9/11. And this is when he said, like, it's all about nostalgia and wish fulfillment and escapism. Today we're going to be looking at what he says about technological arguments and specifically CGI, as well as business reasons and the influence of corporations and conglomerates, and maybe even a little bit of this. Okay. So remember, he says that like all of these factors are interacting together. So he says 9/11 is not as much, you know, doesn't play as much of a role as, you know, a lot of people have said. Okay, so let's talk about technology. How do you guys think that technology has affected superhero films? Do you remember what he said is the kind of argument of technological people, or technological determinists is what he calls them?
Everything looks more real and believable.
Yeah. So the people who do digital filmmaking kind of say, like, we didn't have superhero movies before kind of the early aughts because we didn't have the technology to make them realistic and believable. Exactly. So he says that one argument that he's considering is that superhero films are popular now because we finally have the technology to make them and to make them well. We like tech because it allows greater realism, exactly as Lucas said, and it gives filmmakers more control, and also it's cheaper and reduces the budget. What do you think about this argument?
It makes sense.
Makes sense?
I don't think it's an argument, more so it's kind of just the truth, like the facts that
An observation. Okay. Can you think of technology where it was actually not so great? So we talked last class a little bit about the prequels, the Star Wars prequels. What do you?
Those, okay. It was definitely, when they were made, it was a lot more of the experimental field. And if you were going to compare it to 4, 5, and 6, they had a lot of green screen and CGI versus the real actors and all their makeup. So they don't look great because of the time that they were made, and is the very almost beginning of the green screen and everything.
Yeah. So it was one of the more experimental beginnings of it. But I remember when they came out, and I remember thinking they looked like trash. Even when they came out, I was kind of like, oh, they really relied too much on CGI. Do you guys know the movie where Ryan Reynolds plays Green Lantern. So just to kind of put pressure on the technological determination argument, like sometimes people can overly rely on CGI and it can actually hurt a film. If for those of you who haven't seen the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern, anyone want to fill them in on what that movie looks like? Some of the mistakes of that film.
I've never actually seen it, but I just kind of I kind of thought of the idea that like maybe it gives like movie creators too much power almost, like kind of do whatever they want and like no matter what the idea is, and it just kind of can either really hurt a movie or really inspire a movie. So
in trying for greater realism, they actually
yeah,
like they fall over, and that's been true. Like apparently, it hits a point CGI where like it's too lifelike, but it actually creeps people out. Have you heard this? Like that like when CGI is used to kind of represent people, the better it gets, kind of the more creeped out people are. Here, let me show you a trailer for Green Lantern. Only because, well, for several reasons. Also because there will be a bunch of references to it in Deadpool. And we can talk about the technology here.
Life has gone out in the universe. Worlds annihilated. Lanterns, we face an unprecedented danger. An enemy powerful enough to destroy entire civilizations. To fight this enemy, the ring chose a human. You, your duty. Your name. Hal Jordan. The ring chose you. Take it. Speak the oath.
Speak the oath. Everybody knows the oath. I pledge allegiance to a lantern that I got from a dying purple alien.
So, this is the chosen human.
The ring turns thought into reality. Its limits are only what you can imagine.
The sword of human.
Remember, your enemy is not gonna play fair.
Is that what I think it is?
An alien life form, Doctor. The first that mankind has ever encountered.
I get you well again.
I've never felt better in my life.
Chosen me. See something I don't see yet.
I see it. I have the ability to overcome fear.
Stay here.
No problem.
You die. Innocent lives will be lost. Your world will be annihilated.
Help me save my planet. Fight it with me. Brightest day. Blackest night. No evil shall escape my sight. Those who worship evil's might.
All right, tell me about this. What do you think? Yeah, you can also look how it was received. So Green Lantern came out in 2011, and people thought it was really going to kill the superhero genre. That it represented kind of the end of the superhero genre popularity. What did you think? Especially looking at tech and CGI.
I mean, honestly, the trailer itself doesn't look horrible. Like, I mean, looking at it, you just can tell there's no,
Substance.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's pretty bad. And the suit is CGI. They didn't give him a real suit, so that his suit is CGI, his like mask is CGI. The like people he works with is CGI, the villain, like it's just there's a kind of over reliance on tech, as well as a poorly written script. Okay. Burke says something similar. He says like, okay, look, technology is definitely a big part of why we like superhero films, but it's also not enough to explain them. And he says this especially because it's not just about tech, because people have used innovative ways to film before they had CGI. And so he talks here about someone who filmed, you know, a movie that was set in the ocean. Do you remember what he said about that? So we have Aquaman and how it was filmed in the underwater scenes. Do you remember what he talked about how a film was filmed? How a film was filmed. It's Monday. How previous filmmakers had got around the lack of technology to film underwater scenes. They filmed them through like, they put a fish tank in front of the camera, and somehow like that actually made it look really good. Also, do you guys know the story behind Jaws? You know Jaws, right? Jaws is like kind of, tell me about Jaws, the first one.
Well, it was filmed on the Vineyard, which is where I'm from.
Yeah. Yep.
Where it's about this like killer shark.
Killer great white shark.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg is the one that made it, and it won all of these like it's considered one of the best films ever made in terms of like filmmaking. Film scholars love Jaws. They think it's super innovative, and part of this is because the robot shark that they had, so they built a robot shark to kind of be the monster, but it was constantly broken. They named it Bruce, and Bruce was always broken. And so Spielberg had to find ways around it, around like shooting a shark in the water before CGI, because it was filmed in the 70s. And so he kind of decided to make the camera the shark, and he kind of redefined the way we kind of film monster films. Okay, so people innovate. When they don't have technology, they find ways around it. And sometimes it's even better. In fact, some of the film technology was even invented for the content rather than fitted to the tech. Have you guys, you know The Matrix, right? The first one, again, the first one. So bullet time was invented for The Matrix based on comic books. And so it's not just that we have the tech. Now that we have the tech, we can make the movies. In some ways, we invent the tech because we want to tell these particular stories, or at least that's what Burke says, okay? So it's not just as simple as, oh, the reason why superhero films are popular now is because of technology. He says it's not that simple, that we actually want to tell these stories, and that helps push the technology forward, okay? So another example he gives is Sin City. Okay. All right. So those are his pieces. First part of his art chapter is about 9/11 and how in some ways it helps to explain things, but it's not enough. Second part is about technology and how it helps to explain things, but it's not enough. The third part is about conglomerates. What is a conglomerate? I want you to take like 4 minutes and research conglomerates on Google. And I'm going to make a Canvas discussion post for this. Look for images that kind of demonstrate conglomerates, examples of conglomerates, you know, like what is a, you know, model conglomerate. So take like 5-ish minutes, do a little research, and then I'm gonna have you post on discussion 14.1 on Canvas. Where is Canvas? I'm gonna stop sharing there. Good.
So where are we posting this?
Hold on, I haven't made it yet.
Oh, sorry.
No worries. All right. Edit. Nope, JK discussions. Hold on. All right. All right, now there should be a place on Canvas to post. Hey, Ian, we're doing discussion 14.1 right now.
Okie dokie. Okay. Okay, so you guys about ready? All right, so what is a conglomerate? So here's some of the things you guys posted.
A number of different things or parts that are put or grouped together to form a whole, but remain distinct entities. So that's right. So where is that definition from, Lucas? Do you remember?
The first thing when you look up.
Google definitions, right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And so you kind of thought about how, like, actually, like, superhero groups could be conglomerates. Good. The Earth. So basically a large group. Good, Charles. Yes. And Max's one is kind of the one that I was thinking most of. And that's the one also that Burke is thinking most of. A corporation made up of a number of different, sometimes unrelated businesses. So in a conglomerate, one company owns a controlling stake in a number of smaller companies, all of whom conduct businesses separately and independently. Do you think of an example of a conglomerate? The one I always think of is Disney. Like, Disney is a perfect example of a kind of conglomerate.
That's what it said on Google too.
Yeah. There's like a bunch of like television conglomerates. Yeah.
Berkshire Hathaway.
What's that? Berkshire Hathaway?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
It's one of the companies next to Disney, it says.
So let me so I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it, I don't know. I remember building this goddamn PowerPoint. I don't know what happened to it. All right. What is a conglomerate? All right. Let's look at this. So this is the Walt Disney Company. So it has media networks as well as parks, as well as like studios, as well as products. And there's even like games and stuff. And so the Walt Disney Company is a conglomerate, and each of them has like, it's like when you think of conglomerate, you can think of like an umbrella corporation. Fox is a conglomerate. Procter and Gamble is a kind of conglomerate that owns lots of different smaller companies. Disney channels, but also ABC. Did you know that Disney owned ESPN? I know, right? As well as, Pixar and the rest of it. But if you think about it, and they bought Lucasfilm, they bought Marvel, who were like their own companies initially, now are bought by one kind of overarching conglomerate that's able to kind of do lots of different things with it. So why are conglomerates so influential? Burke says that conglomerates favor reliable formulas for guaranteeing profit. When you belong to a big company like that, you kind of like almost like have to justify your existence. And they saw that Marvel had something really successful going, so they bought it. They like how in comics, there's a favorable, a reliable formula. They like the built-in audience. So Burke talks about how, if you watched the Batman cartoons, in the 90s, you're probably going to go see the newest Batman, even if it looks terrible. So they have built-in audiences, which allows conglomerates to do less marketing. So this is the business argument, also the kind of theoretical argument. He also says that conglomerates made it. So conglomerates got in on, comic book films, superhero films for these reasons, but also that they kind of exerted an influence. So conglomerates wanted to make sure that superhero films reached younger audiences and presented a kind of family-friendly PG-13 alternative to action movies. So they're family friendly and fantastical, even though they're still quite violent. So they allow violence, but like there's no strong language, right? In superhero films. Yeah. If you go back to like before superhero films kind of became normalized, to Blade, for instance, you don't get that much. So Blade drops F-bombs constantly. Not quite as constantly as Deadpool, but this definitely kind of became the norm. Also, like I know Tom and I talked about Die Hard last class, but I assume the rest of you guys have seen it, right? Yeah, or nah?
Yeah.
No. Okay. Do you remember what John McClane's like kind of catchphrase from that film is?
I haven't seen it in a really long time, to be
That's
honest.
okay. His like catchphrase, like every time he like blows someone up or like gets a victory, his catchphrase is yippee-ki-yay, motherfuckers. And so like that means like you can't really watch it with your 5-year-old in the same way you can watch like Thor with your 5-year-old, right? And so that's what kind of conglomerates, that's why they thought superhero films were such a, you know, a cash cow, a golden goose, you know. There were some hints or early trends that indicated superhero films would be popular based on the Blade trilogy and the Matrix. I don't know, have you guys seen or do you know of the Batman and Robin movie with George Clooney? The bat suit with nipples? Okay, so that was kind of, yeah, that was kind of considered like people thought that was going to kill, again, like they thought this was going to kill the superhero genre, but then, you know, Spider-Man came and X-Men came and they decided, nah. Okay, so practical considerations that make conglomerates a good kind of idea for superhero or comic book adaptations. Huge companies allowed for the smoothing out of copyright tangles. So like Marvel was basically bankrupt in the 90s and looking for someone to buy them. And they, you know, people kind of didn't want to, so they kind of sold off some of their heroes kind of piecemeal. Deadpool is actually owned by Fox, which is a kind of competitor to the Disney company and Marvel. So there's some weird like copyright issues there. So even though like Deadpool is a Marvel hero, like he's like makes some issues. But if most of them belong to like, if like the Disney company buys the different companies that own each of these individual Marvel characters, they can tell these epic stories and they don't have to worry about copyright infringement. Also, because in comic books, artists don't own their own creations. Instead, they belong to a company or a publisher that can be bought. So like conglomerates don't have to pay royalties to someone like Stan Lee because his characters were owned by Marvel, not by him. It's kind of crazy. He did fine, but like other people who created superheroes kind of got screwed. Franchises also like, so conglomerates like the idea of superhero movies and superhero movies like kind of fit with conglomerate media storytelling because of the copyrights, because artists don't own them, and also because of the franchise potential. You guys know what franchises are, right? Can you name me some popular franchises? What is a franchise?
Subway franchise.
Subway? Okay, right. Yes. Is it a franchise? I think so.
You can buy a franchise from, I think.
Yeah. So yes, you're right. This is another kind of business word that gets applied to a bunch of different things, kind of like conglomerates, right? When I was thinking franchise, I was thinking films, film franchises, or like endless sequels, right? James Bond was the first film franchise. And then there was Jaws, and Star Wars is a franchise.
Fast and Furious.
Was it? Fast and the Furious is a big franchise, yes. And Rocky, I don't know if you guys have seen Rocky with Sylvester Stallone, but they were making 1 billion of them. It became a franchise, right?
Would Lord of the Rings be one?
Yes, yeah, for sure. That has definitely got franchise potential. So conglomerates like the idea of superheroes because, you know, superheroes never really change and are never really associated with one particular actor or individual. Think about Spider-Man. Like Spider-Man has been played by 3 different people just in the last 20 years, right? And, you know, superheroes can never really be ultimately successful. They can't accomplish their goal of a crime-free world. That also allows like endless sequels, right? There's a new villain in town. There's a new, you know, super villain. And this was already kind of modeled in the comics. And so, you know, there's something really appealing about comic books that kind of allows corporations to kind of be like, this makes for great movies. This is like going to be, like I said, a cash cow or a golden goose. Like this is just going to, you know, keep on, it's a gift that keeps on giving. And finally, they allow crossovers, which encourages greater continuity between stories, you know, and endless reboots. Okay, so part of the reason that kind of Burke says that comic book adaptations or superhero films are so popular is not only because of a bit of 9/11, a bit of technology, but also kind of conglomerates kind of funneling a lot of money into comic book movies and doing a lot of marketing and doing a lot of kind of product placement, doing just kind of like a lot of cultural work to make them popular as well. Does that make sense? So it's kind of a combination of we like these stories for these reasons, and also businesses like to sell us these stories for these other reasons. Okay, like, which is not to say like the stories are completely empty. Like there's something in them that we like, but also they are heavily marketed as well. And the last thing Burke talks about is transmedia storytelling. Do you guys know what transmedia storytelling is? So transmedia storytelling, you remember how like there was that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show, right? And like that kind of like was a way for them to kind of tell some stories about like Agent Coulson, right? And his like his people. And so we got a better kind of understanding of Agent Coulson as he kind of functioned in the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. Transmedia storytelling is when you're able to kind of tell a complex story through lots of different medias, film, but also television shows, also video games, stuff like that. So transmedia storytelling allows spin-offs into other mediums, television, video games, sometimes even music, if you think about the Guardians of the Galaxy soundtrack, right? And lots of merchandise opportunity. Do you guys own a Marvel thing? Any of you can you think about like what kind of Marvel merchandise you own? My kid has. Go ahead.
An action figure.
Yes, action figures, definitely. Whether they're like for little kids or even like the like adult like collectibles, right? My kid also has like several Marvel t-shirts, right? With all the Avengers on them and with, you know, Spider-Man and stuff like that. Glasses. My sister has lots of Wonder Woman glasses like to drink out of. Just all kinds of stuff. You can even like Burke talks about, you know, clothing to toys to household objects like lunchboxes to even cell phone plans. Like you can get like the Green Lantern cell phone plan. Wild. Okay, so that's all I had on my slideshow for now. All right, so that's what he says. Conglomerates love comic book stories and love turning them into movies because of the franchise potential, because of built-in audiences, because of reliable formulas, and also because of transmedia storytelling and the opportunity for endless reboots or kind of spin-offs, or what's the other one that what was it? Crossovers. Okay, so that brings us to 14.2. Okay, so what? So how might we answer the so what question for Liam Burke's conglomerate argument section? Why is it important or significant that conglomerates have adopted superhero figures from comics? What might be some of the real world consequences of, you know, their particular adaptations or interpretations? Especially if like studios really like the idea of built-in audiences. They like the idea of, formulas, reliable formulas for generating revenue, if they're really mostly interested in the kind of the bottom line and profits. Those would be kind of things to think about. So take like 5 minutes and answer the kind of the so what for Liam Burke. Like, what do you think might be some of the results of conglomerates controlling superhero films and superhero adaptations? All right, I'll be back in a minute. I'm gonna get coffee. I did stop sharing, right? Okay, good. Good, Noah. Yeah. So Noah wrote, on the post that superhero creators might see their kind of creation changed in ways that they think are not, authentic or true to the original. There's that. What else could be some effects of conglomerates kind of controlling things? So remember, if you're kind of if your biggest goal in making a film is to really kind of make a profit, you might be less willing to kind of take a risk or to shake things up. So we talked a little bit about Guardians of the Galaxy and how it seems like a really big departure. Some people thought it was a big risk for Marvel, but in the Marvel Studios Phenomena book, there's a whole chapter about how actually Guardians of the Galaxy was not that risky. It was a very calculated risk. And so they looked at a lot of the elements of it and they kind of minimized their risk in most ways. And so there's the danger of comic book films becoming a bit stale because they're relying on a formula rather than, taking a chance on innovation. Another reason or effect rather, another effect of conglomerates taking a big role in superhero films could be also that so Hollywood is overwhelmingly old, white, straight, rich men making things. And so the idea is maybe that's part of the reason why we have all these different white, straight, male superheroes without any kind of diversity, at least until Black Panther and Wonder Woman, right? So we had Chris Helmsworth and Chris Pratt and Chris Evans and Christian Bale and just all of the Chris's before, we got one, Chadwick Boseman. Let's see, what else do I got? So this is what I have. Share screen, share. This is where my PowerPoint ends up kind of running out. So the conglomerate interest to make a profit above all else might make their use of comics and their adaptations of comic book stories a little bit more conservative and a little less risky. They're also they're less, if they're kind of counting on a built-in audience, they're less likely to take interesting risks, making, Peter Quill into a lady or Black, right? What do you guys think of that? Yeah, no.
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's see what else. This has effects with Deadpool because Ryan Reynolds was trying to get Deadpool made for almost his whole career, almost 20 years. He actually made Green Lantern because he was told Deadpool would never be made. I don't know how many of you saw Ryan Reynolds as kind of a Deadpool figure in, what is it? The end of X-Men, is it X-Men Origins? Yeah, and Ryan Reynolds was kind of a Deadpool figure, but they changed the figure so much. And that was another kind of way that Reynolds was talked into doing a superhero film that was kind of not authentic to his vision. Yep. Right, Nick. Yeah. Yep. So basically Deadpool, it took forever to get it made because it was considered too risky. Also there's up until Deadpool, there were no rated R superhero films, which kind of limited the kinds of stories they could tell, right? Yeah. All right, so the last couple points Burke makes or is that like, he says that that like the superhero, the actors who are cast to play superheroes are kind of unknown before they become superheroes. We've talked about this before, and that finally like a changing of the guard. So as older studio executives and filmmakers kind of age out, younger people who have a different relationship with comics are able to make them. And also like in the last 50 years, comics have kind of changed. Have you ever heard of like a graphic novel? Anyone ever heard of a graphic novel?
Isn't that just a comic book?
It's definitely like basically like a comic book, except like it may be like it's like not for kids. It like kind of deals with more serious topics. So like The Boys, that was like a graphic novel before it was a thing, and it would have to be like kind of a graphic novel and less of a comic book, because like it begins with rape, right? I don't know if I think that in the show they made her just like sexually harassed, but in the comic, like she legit gets raped by like the head superhero. The Watchmen. Have you guys heard of The Watchmen? So it's on HBO right now. But The Watchmen kind of was like the first like it was kind of like what The Boys is now originally. It was a superhero comic, but it was also kind of like a superhero satire or spoof. And it was a graphic novel, and it basically kind of used superheroes to kind of critique and satirize Cold War. And the Cold War, let's do all Wikipedia. So it was made from like 86 to 87, right at the end of the Cold War. And it kind of did a comic book maxi series. Contemporary anxiety is to deconstruct and satirize the superhero concept, as well as kind of the Cold War and the Soviet Union moral struggles. Okay. If you're curious, this is a really good read. Although like it's as old as I am, so it's definitely like more of a historical thing for you, but it's really good. The film that was made from The Watchmen is kind of a really interesting disaster, or like a very interesting mess. So he basically says like, since we grew up in an era when graphic novels are a little bit more respected, I don't know, has anyone heard of Mouse? Oops. Let me show you. There it is. So this is Mouse. Anyone read that, seen it? No. Okay, so it's kind of like a comic book, except like it's about the Holocaust, and it's also kind of a memoir. So the guy who wrote it, his father was a survivor of Auschwitz, and so he wrote about his father in comic book form. And so like things get more legit. So people started like seeing comic books as a legit kind of source material for movies and movie making and movie adaptation. Okay. All right. Since I couldn't find my PowerPoint and I'm kind of a mess today, let's go early. Do 14.1 and 14.2 when you can, complete them, and watch Deadpool for next class. The thing about Deadpool is, because it's owned by Fox and not by like Marvel, I couldn't get a free version of Deadpool. So you're gonna have to like find it or buy it, okay, on Amazon. But because I haven't asked you to buy too much, I kind of thought it would be fine to ask you to buy this, but whatever. Find it somewhere and watch it, okay? For next class, you might have to purchase it. Just know that going in.
It's free on Hulu.
Perfect. Thank you, Ian. So if you have Hulu or know someone who has Hulu, Deadpool. All right. Have a good day. I'll see you Thursday. I can't wait to talk about Deadpool with you guys.
Have a great day.
Thank you, Professor. Have a good one.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Professor.
Bye. Anyone have any questions for me?